Lee, I think that was neat what you did with the time of silence. We've never done that to my knowledge, and I think that was very, very appropriate. I think that was something that we may want to repeat that every year. I just think that was good. So thank you for doing that. All right, so today we're going to do more of an open forum. I don't anticipate this being real long, and it's one of these Sundays. It just was a feel that I had this morning that it was going to be one of those down Sundays, and we got 15 people gone today. I was counting from the back because I know. Here's how you know how I count you all. I know where you sit, so I sit there, and that's how I do it. Honestly, I go. Okay, Christina's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're missing Walton and Dorothy over there, and we're missing Bill and Dana. And so I start counting them up in my head, and there was like 15 people that were missing today. So that's the most I think we've ever had miss. And I hope we do not become one of those churches that it's the exodus that happens every holiday. Lebanon, when we attended Lebanon Church of Nazarene, a church of about, I don't know how many it had when we were there, 150, 200, but at least probably 60%, I'd say, of the congregation left every holiday. Boom, gone. You'd come to church and like, whoa. And so today was a whoa. But anyway, those of you joining us on Facebook, we are going to have a discussion. We're going to talk about sermons that I've preached for the last 2 and almost a half years. And I'm going to try to get some feedback from you. And I have not, if you're joining us by Facebook and you haven't got a handout from me, it's because I haven't sent them out yet. And I forgot to do that. And but I'll try to get that to you maybe this afternoon. But anyway, most of you should have the sermon list handout. Who does not have one that Lori can run around and hand you one of those? Did anybody bring them? You need them? Okay, over here, Bob and Barb. Anybody else not have their? Okay, and then B. Miller and Sherry, and needs a copy of that. So, because I want to talk about that a little bit. Okay, and then I do have an open forum questionnaire, but it's a 1-page, and you don't have to have it, and unless you just want to know kind of some of the things I'm going to ask you for today. And so I hate that we're going to miss some of the others' input, but regardless, we're going to proceed. And so do this. Take your sermon list by date and open it up to the second page all the way down toward the bottom where it says 2023. I'm going to kind of do this backwards. So I'm going to mention, at least go through these real quick, to mention these different sermons that I've preached on. So I'm going to do 2023. I'll go through all those, and then I'll do 2024. So we'll kind of backtrack on our handout sheet and go through those, and then we'll just mention the ones that I've done so far this year. So if most of you here today, most of this current congregation came to the church probably, I'm trying to think what year it was, but I know it's been within 3 to 5 years, most of this congregation came. And so when we went through coronavirus, it was a time where, we were down to 7 people every Sunday during that time, and many moved away, and a lot of things changed for us. But God brought us a brand new congregation of people, and He did it pretty much in about 6 months period of time. I mean, it was like an Easter where Bob and Barb walked in the door that Easter, and Teresa walked in the door that Sunday, and then you guys came, I think it was toward the tail end of summer, if I remember right. I don't remember if it was August. Was it August? Fall? Was it fall? It was the same year. I know you guys came in, and little by little, God is building this congregation to be what it is, and what a wonderful group of people to pastor and to be with. I want you to understand this about me. I am not just your pastor. This is my church too. All right? I love all of you. I mean, I feel like this is my church too. Now, some pastors are up here just doing their job. That's not me. That is not me. This is my church also. I love it here. And so anyway, let's just kind of go through these pretty quick. just to refresh your memory of the type of topics. What I plan to do with this is I want to have, I don't know, a spare maybe 8 to 10 of them back at the sound booth. And whenever we have a new family that's looking for a church home, I want to give them a copy of this. And because they're evaluating us based on one Sunday, you know. And then if they come back a second Sunday, they're at least thinking of us a little bit more. And but, you know, I better be really good for those 2 Sundays or they're probably never going to come back again. Well, if I could give them a list of the kind of topics that we've discussed over the years, it may help. So that's another reason I put this together. So as you look at 2023, it's at the bottom of page 2 on your handout sheets. Here's some of the things. January 1st was canceled for snow. That happens about every other year here where we have a service canceled from snow and ice. But January 8th talked about Balaam and the talking donkey. I got to tell you, that's probably one of my favorite sermons to ever preach on. I could preach on that every year and get tickled every time I read that story. And Balaam was a prophet who, well, he had a prophetic gift, but he really did not follow God in the right way. So it was almost, I don't know, it was almost a little bit of the devil mixed with a little bit of God. He wasn't a very good guy. But anyway, that whole story is fascinating, and he wasn't listening to God on this particular situation, and the donkey kept trying to stop him, and he starts screaming at the donkey, and the donkey starts talking to him. I think it's one of the best stories in the Bible, and the talking donkey story. I look back at my notes today because this morning I was trying to refresh my memory for this. And I think I've preached on him. It's either 3 or 4 times, that story. That's how much I love doing that story. I've been here. I'm finishing 17 years. August 8th will be the official done of 17, actually August 7, because I came on August 8th, and my younger son's birthday. And so I will have finished 17 years at this one church on that date. But anyway, so Elisha's servant, I love preaching that story. It's a story where Elisha looked out over the fields and he saw all these. He was surrounded. They were going to take him into custody, and the servant said, "What are we going to do? What are we going to do?" Well, Elisha could see from a spiritual realm all these chariots of God that had surrounded them. That story is so much fun to preach. And it's almost like Elisha's servant was going, "What you talking about, Willis?" You know, one of those kind of things. You got chariots all around you. Yeah, no, there ain't. And then Elisha had God open his eyes and he saw them. And many times we don't see that. In that same year, I was going through some anxiety on trips, something I've faced 3 different times in my life. And God had me dig deep to get over that. And I did a 6-part series, and that was things that I could give to you that I learned during that time that helped me conquer that problem that I was going through. And that's what that series was about. In the spring, I did a 3-part church membership class from the pulpit. Never done that before. And where I just basically, normally I do that downstairs in a room, and I just taught that whole class from the pulpit. And because we had so many people who were ready to join, and so I just did it as sermons, and that's what that was. Every once in a while, I look back at this stuff that I preach, and I think, that was actually pretty good. And but that's what happens when you listen to God. You know, you listen to God, you'll get stuff. You know, I've preached sermons, and I thought about it later, and I thought, that was really good. Well, that's what happens. You know, you just listen to God, and he'll give you really good stuff, and it'll make you look better than what you really are. But look at that Easter series I did, Words Before the Cross, Words on the Cross, Resurrection Words. And I had forgotten that was my titles until I double-checked it. I did a sermon called Circumstantial Faith versus Constant Faith, and in that I tried to point out that the world wants to live with circumstantial faith. And that means that they don't really listen to God, they don't try to pursue God until a problem happens, and then they have faith for that circumstance. And that's not the way we're meant to live. We're meant to live with a constant faith. That's what that sermon was about. And I'm going to ask you here in a minute, when we get done with all this, which one of these sermons, if you remember these, which one of these sermons really stuck out in your mind? And another question I'm going to ask you is there something that you would like for me to speak about? And so I'm going to mention one that Jenny mentioned to me, and I am praying about that and looking very, very serious at that. And but I'll open that up to you guys here in a little bit. But let me kind of go over some of these others that I talked about. God makes you a better version of yourself. Boy, that is so true. And when I think of my own life, I am a better version of me, and it's all because of God. And every once in a while, I remember back of, well, that was sure stupid what I did then. Well, that one was really stupid what I did then. Y'all ever do that, or am I the only one that ever thinks back? And I think back even in my police days, I was thinking about some things that I did, and I think back on that, and I think, boy, that was really stupid. And then I think other things of what I did well, and that's life. But some things I did very well, and some things I didn't do so good. But I do know this: God makes me a better version of me, and God makes you a better version of you. Your best self will be when you choose to follow God completely. You want to see your best self, that'll be your best self right there. And that's what that whole sermon was about. Differences in two leaders. I just got inspired with this one week, and I thought, well, let's compare Saul to David. And Saul being the leader just before David, and then David, and that's what that whole sermon was about. Important thoughts from Ecclesiastes. That actually was fun for me because I took kind of some of the highlights of the book of Ecclesiastes, and which was written by Solomon, King Solomon, and I brought out some things that really was fascinating to me, and that was this reoccurring comment all the way through Ecclesiastes about when you die, no one's going to remember you after a period of time. Now, they will at first. They're all going to remember. The ones that loved you are going to hurt. I'm going to cry when the day's going to come, when I lose you, Bob and Barb, and every one of you. And I'll probably be here for funerals of people in this church that I love you, and it's going to hurt. But so I'll probably be sad but happy for you as well during that time. And I've thought about that comment many times. But anyway, you think about Saul and David and the two different types of persons they were, and then you look at Ecclesiastes, and Ecclesiastes pretty much says, after so long a period of time, and I would say probably, it's almost depressing to say this, but probably 10, 15 years after you die, no one's going to remember you. That's probably about right. Very few people will ever even remember you. Now, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that a great thought? What did you learn today? Nobody's going to remember me in 10 to 15 years after I die. That was a great sermon today, but hey, Ecclesiastes, that's the theme all throughout it. Here was the point, though. Anything you do for God will count. And the rest of it, even if you were just a wonderful person, in time it's going to fade. How many pictures of you will still be somewhere 30 years after you die? How many is going to be anywhere? Can they even find a picture? Who is this guy? Who is this gal? And that's what Ecclesiastes is a lot about. So it's not to depress you, it's to tell you everything you do, you best be doing it for God, because that's the only thing that's going to last. And that's what that sermon was about. All the Mother's Days and Father's Days, I usually do an open forum. The Holy Spirit checked me this year and said no. And I preached that sermon on Suzanne Wesley. And that was fun to do, but we'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, Seasons of Time was a sermon I did, and I compared our 4 seasons that we have in this area, winter, spring, summer, and fall. And I talked about how people will have seasons of time in their own life that are like spring. There's new things going on in your life, like summer, where you're too busy, but good things are happening. Fall and winter months are hard months. And I kind of compared it. That's what that sermon was about. Lies of Satan. I talked about lying techniques that people use and Christians better not ever use. But I have seen Christians use those same lying techniques that the world uses and Satan invented. And that is a no-no. We do not do that. And then I talked about what to do in part 2 of that when people are lying about you, how to handle that. Humility was a series I did, 6 parts. And I try to talk about humility a lot because I think it's the key to spiritual growth. I think it's the key to always making the right decisions about the things you choose to do or say or that kind of thing. Humility has got to be there. And one of the things I did in that series is I gave you a test. If you were here at the church, you got a test. And the test asked you, is this, if you felt like this, is this of humility or is it of pride? And it was question after question after question after question. I did that. And because I was trying to help drive home what's of humility and what's of pride, so we would get better at that. That's what that whole sermon was about. But anyways, a 6-part series on humility. Daniel, I love doing Bible character sermons. I look back at this year's so far, and sometimes I don't realize what all I've done because I just try to listen to God every week. But I've only done one Bible character this year, and that was Zacchaeus. And so I look back on it and I thought, I may have to get to some Bible characters because I love preaching about them anyway. It's fun for me, and I learned so much. But we did Daniel in July and August of that year, 3-part series. I did Esther and Mordecai, a 3-part series. That was the same year that Sight and Sound was running their special on Esther. And I think some of you, did you guys go and see Esther? I thought it was great. Lori and I got to go, and it was fun preaching the story because then I knew the rest of the details of that play that we went to. David, I preach on David. I've preached on him, I think, 3 times since I've been here. First time I preached on it was like a 12-part series. It was a long series. And but in 2023, I did a, 1, 2, you kind of had a 1A, 1B, but how many was it total? I think it was 7 parts or so, 7 or 8 if you count David's war battles and David's thankfulness and things like that. So, and then I wrapped up 2023 with a sermon on winning the lost is our job, and then Christmas themes, which if you, so go back to the beginning page where it says 2024, and I'll mention some of the sermons I preached in 2024 just to remind you of, and again, I'll ask you which of these were the most helpful to you and that kind of thing. Holidays are hard. I've said that before. Maybe some pastors it isn't hard, but it is hard for me because I'm always trying to come up with how do I tell the same story so that people can kind of remind themselves of that story, which is important, but do it with a new twist that kind of keeps people's interest up. And so that's always a bit of a challenge every year. But go to 2024. It's on page 1 of your sermon list by date. And usually in January, I do at least 1, if not 2 sermons on how to read the Bible, because I feel like people don't read the Bible enough and they need some challenge in that area. The more you read the Bible, the quicker you're going to grow. And so that year of 2024, that first Sunday, I did a sermon on ways to read the Bible. Garden of Eden, I've preached on, I think 3 times now, if I look back in my notes, and I love preaching about the Garden of Eden, and because it relates to heaven. It really does. That garden was like perfect. I mean, there was no rain during those times. It did not rain. The water came up from the ground and wet everything. and there was rivers running through it, and there's symbolism of heaven with Garden of Eden, and it actually, they know where it was, and it's today underwater. And I went over all that. I even showed you a map of where scholars believe that that location was actually at. And why did they close it off after sin? Because inside of the Garden of Eden, if you kept eating from the tree of life, you would live forever. And by cutting that off, you lost that ability. And so I threw some insights about heaven in there, and I just absolutely love preaching on Garden of Eden. Then I did, last year I did a whole series on Moses, and how many was it? 11 sermons? No, 12 sermons on Moses, and concluded with the 10 Commandments, and how that the first 4 commandments are all about love God, and the last 6 are all about love others. And I'll tell you, the most fun I had on Moses that year was when I got to research where was the Red Sea crossed at. Wow, that was fun for me. And I spent a bunch of time researching that and looked at different people's ideas, and I brought that out during that series and talked about how deep the water was and what would have had to happen to cross in this area versus this area, and which one, and I looked at several possibilities. What a fun series for me that was to do that one. And then go over to the next page. Let's see. I did a sermon on the potter and the clay. That is such a cool little passage of Scripture, and talking about how God wants to change us and mold our lives, and that's what that was about. Respect and honor is, I've never heard a sermon that I can ever recall at any church in my entire life on respect and honor. I don't recall one sermon my entire life. So if it was preached, I sure didn't listen very well, because I don't recall it. And yet, the Bible is full of respect this person, honor this person, over and over and over again, especially in the New Testament, and how we're to treat one another. And it has to be the pattern for this church. We have to operate by respect and honor. I do things for Lee Williams out of respect and honor all the time. I try to do the same for Lee Connor as well. And they're leaders, they're involved in worship and preparing the sound booth and all those kind of things. And I try to honor Lee by making sure that he gets my notes on Friday early enough, because he has a life too. It is not right for me to give him those notes Saturday night when he's trying to do something with his family. So I live by respect and honor. And our board has to respect and honor each other. Our new board, we met, was it just this last week? Was it? No, it was a week before, I think. Yeah. But I talked about that. We got to respect and honor each other, people. And we don't come in here and have our minds made up ahead of time. We talk to each other in a kind way and in a respectful way. We want everybody's opinions. And that sermon was vital to our church. Thinking Like God Thinks was a 2-part series I did that year in July. It was last year. And, we got to think like God thinks. How would, it goes back to that old thing that people used to say, what would Jesus do? So what would Jesus do? WWJD? Is that how it went? And people had those little bands for a while. But it's the same way. I mean, as you're thinking, Jesus, how he thinks is exactly how the Father thinks. He said that to Philip. Hey, don't you know you've seen the Father if you've seen me, And but we have to think like God thinks on everything. And that's what that series is about. Taught about the Holy Spirit. I taught 4 symbols of the Holy Spirit. Wind, fire, I forget all the different symbols that I had. The dove was in there, and several things like that. How to hear God better was a part of that series. Things I've learned from the ministry was a little tough, because that one kind of came off probably as a little bit negative. I remember that Sunday, and y'all were kind of looking at me like this, and I'm thinking, I don't know that I'm really relating real good with this congregation on this sermon. And but it was things that I've noticed about Christians, not this congregation, but Christians in general, that they want to do as little as they can get away with for God and think that they're a great Christian. And that's kind of what that sermon was about. I should have probably pre-warned the congregation. I'm not saying you all are like that, because everybody was looking at me funny that Sunday, I remember very clearly. And Joseph, I love preaching. I could preach on Joseph every year. And I've done, I don't know how many sermons on him before in the past, 10, 12 sermons. I only did 5 last year. His story is just so beautiful. And how do you go through everything he went through, continue to serve God, not be mad at God, not be mad at your brothers, not hate people? How do you do that? Well, he did it. And amazing guy. Women of the Bible was a blast. And our congregation responded well to that. And we did 6 sermons, and I did half of them. Dana Ice did 2 of them, and Jenny did 1 of them as well. And all you guys did so well on the sermons. I think our people ate it up. Whether I was speaking, you were speaking, or Dana was speaking, it didn't matter. It was a fun series, and I hope we can repeat that. I hope we can utilize you guys again and on a series on women. It was great. Hearing your perspective, I can give you my perspective, but a woman's going to have even a better perspective, and you guys just did great. Count your blessings, name them one by one, was a Thanksgiving message. And then last year is the first time I've ever taken Christmas hymns and talked about where they came from. I had a blast. I hope for you that wasn't a disappointment, because it wasn't the typical Christmas theme that most people come to church for during Christmas to hear about. But it was fun for me studying those hymns and seeing where they came from. And we looked at 5 different hymns and where they came from, who wrote them. And I even talked to you about what wasn't biblical and what was, and some things like that. So, all right, and then I'll wrap this up real fast, and then I want to hear your thoughts real quick on some of the sermons that have stuck out in your mind the best, and then any suggestions that you have that you would like for me to focus on. I try hard to hear God, but I got to tell you that every once in a while, some fresh thoughts do kind of help me to see God a little clearer. And sometimes I realize I'm missing things. I'm not thinking of this or whatever. Or I may have thought of it and I just haven't gone further with it. And so that's why today you're going to help me. I hope you'll help me on some new inspirations on things that we'll do for the rest of the year. But this year I started off with 2 sermons on Bible study techniques. The first one was pretty typical, like I usually speak about how to study the Bible. The second one, I think I got into, if I remember right, it was in the second one, but I did topical studies, which I think we all need to start doing. Because just reading the Bible, a few verses every day, that's good. But if you did topical studies, I'm telling you, you're going to grow probably 10 times faster. You do a whole study. You decide, I'm going to study every verse in the Bible that has the word trust in God or faith or whatever it is that you're wanting to study and learn some more about. And they're easy to do if you just do a search on Google. I'm telling you, it's a lazy way of doing it. Just do a search on Google, Bible verses on such and such. And people have done these. So you're going to come up with like 30 different people who've done these before. And what I do is tap onto them, see what their verses are, and I'm copying them off, copy and pasting and dropping. And then I go to somebody else and I look and see what their verses in case the first one missed. And by the time I'm done, I've got a pretty good list of verses that I've been able to compile. And the thing about our Bible, I wish the Christian Bible almost was a topical Bible. So you could say, okay, I want to study every verse on heaven. So you go to the heaven book. And the heaven book has all the verses in one area. Well, that's not the way the Bible works. It's stories about people's lives and things. So you got to kind of piece it together. And when I did that series on heaven, I had to do a lot of different angles to come up with what I was able to put together for that series. So, if you'll do topical studies, I'm telling you, you're going to learn so much more. And so let's say you did 6 topical studies this year. Everything from anxiety, fear, anything. oh my goodness, by the end of the year, will have known about that topic from all different angles. Not just one verse, all different angles. And so that's what that little beginning of this year was about. I talked about the importance of close family and close friends. We all need that. I did that in January. And as a church, we can be that to each other. We can be, I have people in this church, honestly, I'm closer to than my own personal family. And maybe with the exception of my older brother, I'm probably the closest to Steve. And because Steve's always been there for me, always, even more than anybody else. And but the rest of this family has been really my family. And so I just talked about the importance of that. Vision casting, we talked a little bit about the church. Learning truth, which is another way of thinking of God's ways of doing things. Important things to know about a great marriage. That, I think, was an outstanding sermon, personally. And I talked about Love Bank. Do you remember the Love Bank? And every week, you're either making withdrawals or you're making deposits in your Love Bank. And you either got a lot of love in that little deposit bank thing, savings account or whatever, or you're about bankrupt. And it's all based on the things that you do every single day, and that you say to one another and how you say it and all those things. What a fun sermon that was. And I talked a lot about the things I do in premarital counseling with people. We canceled church in February one time. I talked about a two-part series about ways God spoke in the New Testament days. Zacchaeus was a blast. I think that's the first time I'd ever preached on the story. And the twin girls made it really fun when they sang and led our congregation at the end of that service. So, and Jenny was right up there with them. So, our preconceived thinking and how it can keep us from hearing God. We're set in our mind. Things should be done a certain way, and you don't even listen to God when you get like that. You can't even hear God. Reliving the Easter story in chronological order was fun this year. And the Susanna Wesley story, I got more compliments on that story, that sermon, by women that just loved it. They absolutely loved it. Dorothy sent me an email and said, wow, that was good. And it was fun to preach about her life and all the things that she went through and how she served God and how her kids turned out. And Why We Need God was last week. So that's the last 2.5 years of sermons that God has given me to preach. And so let's talk a little bit about it. Was there anything in those 2.5 years that kind of stand out in your mind really a lot, that are very, very helpful, or were helpful to you, and and then we'll do suggestions here in just a little bit. But anybody got anything in particular, any of those sermons that really kind of jumped out at you? I paid Lori to do this, so go ahead. I'll give you the $50 after service. So.
I'll hold you to it. Okay. Yes, true. Thank you.
Go ahead, share. Lori. Just think, I'm going to get worse. I'm going to get worse. What was your name again? Ain't I married to you? I think I am. She's probably thinking, Mike, we shouldn't joke about that one, because that probably happens to people. Who are you? Where'd you come from? I've been here for 27 years. And, what's your name? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sure. Okay. Maybe it's because I'm a woman, but I really like the Susanna Wesley one. I would love to have more done like that. That was just so interesting. And then with you and Jenny and Dana, I love the stories about the in-depth look at the women of the Bible. I love that.
Yeah.
That was just, they get overlooked.
Yeah. And I think our men were even interested in that series as well. I mean, I didn't see any men that looked like they were bored during that series. And our women just seemed to eat it up. And it's something that, you know, when you have a male pastor, he doesn't think like a female. I'm sorry. I mean, whoever you're closest to, like I was closest to my mom, so I do have some female type of thinking. That happens when you're closest to your mom than your dad. And so I'm capable of thinking both ways, but I can't do what a woman can do. And so it was fun to do that, and we will do that kind of thing again.
And also, I like the humility series.
Okay, good. Yeah, go ahead, Danny. Thank you, Lori.
Well, first of all, I'm a little disappointed because you only gave me $25.
No,
So
oh God.
I don't know what that was all about. For me, Moses really stood out a lot.
The Moses series?
It was really interesting, and I could tell you put a ton of time
Oh
into
man,
it.
I did. I did.
For me, it just hit because, you know, Moses he thought of himself as lesser, and he was like, he didn't have a lot of, you know, self-esteem, and he was like, why would you pick me? I'm the worst guy in the world
Yeah.
for this. And God was like, no, you're the one.
You're the one. Yeah.
So that one really stood out to me, and I really enjoyed that. I like when we can get really in depth and go in and look at the maps and describe the time and what the landscape was like and how the rest of the world reacted to those things.
Your dad even had some great comments for me after some of those sermons, and he would ask me this and that and various things. But yeah, that site where they crossed the Red Sea, oh my goodness, I learned stuff I never even realized when I did that study. I think I spent, if I remember right, it was like 30 hours of research trying to come up with where exactly did they cross. And so I was a full-time pastor that week. I could tell you for much of that series I was. Go ahead, Jenny.
Two things. I really enjoyed the Garden of Eden. I just loved all of the details from the Garden of Eden.
Oh, the Garden of Eden,
It
you
really
did?
got me thinking of some things that I hadn't even thought about.
Yeah.
And then the other one was humility. I really needed that one. I probably need that one every day.
Yeah. Yeah, people have no clue. You know, I know there's people in churches that think they're humble, and they have no clue that their attitudes are so far from humble. And you know, I guarantee you, if you are judgmental, you are not humble. And because humility and judgmental will not go together. It does not. And so I try when I do those series to get past what people think humble is and help them see it. That's why I created that questionnaire that time, so that we'd have that. So thank you for your thoughts. Anybody else? Anything in particular that kind of jumped out at you over any of these sermons?
For me, all the series you did on people,
Okay.
I thought were very interesting. It kind of brings them to life. And
You're talking about Bible characters?
yeah, the Bible characters,
Okay.
David, Daniel,
Yeah.
Moses.
Yeah.
And the women's series, it kind of brings them to life.
It
and
does, yeah.
Helps you understand kind of the way they thought and
Yeah.
the way they did things back then.
Yeah. Just think, if those Bible character stories were not in the Bible, and it was just a list of do's and don'ts. No, yeah, you're right, Jenny. I mean, how could we know? Yeah. You know, when we go over those stories, they're fascinating to me. I'm having fun teaching those and doing the research on those. It's a joy to do those kind of sermons, and so because it does help bring them to light, and it helps me know, well, they made these mistakes, I mess up too, and this what's worked for them, so I better use the same thing. And yeah, so good, Dick. Great comment. Somebody else, anything else on the sermons before we go a little further? Yeah.
I especially enjoyed the character sketches that you did.
The Bible
on
character ones?
Bible characters and Bible stories.
Yeah,
I eat them up.
yeah,
And 'cause when you're going through something, you'd like to have something to fall back on and to give you some help. And sometimes you can get a Bible story, it lives for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate you most of the time,
Most of the time.
all the time. I have three. When you preached on Balaam and the talking donkey,
Yeah, yeah,
God speaks to us in so many ways.
yeah,
He can use anybody or anything
yeah.
to talk to us. And that just reminds me of some of the things God has to go through. I can see him up there just shaking his head going, okay, it's time for the donkey to talk.
Really? Because you're not hearing me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I hear you.
yeah.
And I enjoyed this sermon on Zacchaeus
Yeah.
because you don't hear that sermon very often. But I especially enjoyed the twins and Jenny
Oh, wow.
leading in the music.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
were the exclamation point on that
Absolutely.
sermon. And we're gonna do more of that. We've been talking about that in the background in case I don't know if I've said anything out loud to you all, but we're gonna try to. Christina's little girl just ate that up that Sunday. And I had told Christina ahead of time what we're going to do. I kind of whispered it to her. I said, we're going to sing the Zacchaeus song at the end. And so I'm assuming she must have said something to her little girl. And that little girl, you all didn't see her, but I did because I'm always in the back, so I can see what's going on. That's why I'm back there. And that little girl got out in the aisle and was trying her best to follow the twins' motions with learning that song. And she sang that song to her mother all week long. And like that drove Christina nuts in a good way. And so we're going to do more of that. We're going to Jenny's going to try to come up with some song ideas that children like. And then I think Lee Williams and Becky Williams were going to work on some ideas as well. And so what we'll do is on a Sunday when Christina's family's here and we don't have a super serious ending. I don't want to do it at a super serious ending of a sermon. But if it's, kind of just a teaching, we're going to sing one of those songs. And then to bless Christina's daughter. Because things like that, when you're that little, things like that, you're not going to forget those Sundays. And so she made me a little cross. Her little girl made me a little cross and painted it. And it was kind of, isn't there like two different levels to it? There's like, it seemed like it's almost 3D kind of thing. But anyway, and then she tried to write on it, "Love you, Pastor Mike," on the back. But you could tell that she kind of had to give up and her mom helped her. But I have that on my refrigerator and I will not get rid of that. And when any child does something for me like that, I don't forget those things. That's not a little deal to me. That's a big deal. That's like my own child doing something for me. That's how precious it is. I have things that the twins have given me, and I will never get rid of those. I have no plans to ever, any little thing they made for me or whatever. So that's important. But I want to bless Christina's daughter, and I hope we'll be able to do that some. So.
I noticed that Lily stands out in the aisle every once in a while.
Yeah, maybe
during
she's prepared.
music time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she's a blessing.
Yeah, if we could figure out, I would love to do it twice a month, but I can't predict the sermons. I don't know until the last minute, kind of what God's going to do and how serious it's going to end. But we'll be flexible. We'll come up with something and we can bless her. So, do you? Awesome. Okay. Okay. All right. You guys just keep working on it because we'll do that. And it's fun for the rest of us. You can't tell me you didn't have fun at the end of the sermon singing the Zacchaeus song. Come on. Every single adult in here loved that.
Yeah.
So we can do it. All right. Very good. Any other thoughts on that? And then I'm going to shift gears and ask you any sermon ideas that you might have. Doesn't mean I'll do it, because I always do what God tells me to do. But, like I say, sometimes my own thinking hinders God. And because I'm thinking a certain way, and I need to maybe come up with another thought. And that's what this is going to help me with today, is with trying to come up with new thoughts. Anything else that you got?
Joseph. I love when you preach on Joseph because it reminds me of humility.
Yeah. Oh, he understood
He's got to
it.
be the most humble man that
Yeah.
ever lived, even though it says Moses.
Yeah, it does say
was.
Moses, yeah.
I can't believe that everything that he went through, everything that, like the baker and the wine taster,
Yeah.
forgetting about him for so long.
Oh, yeah.
But every place that he went, even in prison, he was a blessing
Yeah,
to somebody.
yeah,
And he just reminds me of humility.
yeah. I think he is a great example of humility. So, yeah, I agree with you. All right, very good. Okay, sermon ideas. So Jenny mentioned to me that she'd love it if you're so kind. And she tries to hear God herself really well. And so I think if I remember how you worded it, can you at least pray and consider redoing that Heaven series? And that's perfect. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm considering and praying. And I'm actually looking at August in possibly starting that series. And we'll see. That was a 9-part series I did on heaven. And I did a lot of research on that. And so I'll point out some things. Many things that I'll talk about, we don't know for sure. But when I say something to you that I can't prove biblically, I'm going to tell you that. All right? That's a difference between me and many pastors. Just tell you as if they know better. You know, if I don't know and I can't prove this, you'll hear me in that series say, I can't prove this, but I do believe based on these other events like Jesus' resurrected body, if we did that as a pattern, it would appear that this is the way heaven's going to be. And so a lot of that series, I did do that. I did do something I'll have to chat with Lee Williams about because I don't know what he'll feel about it. But I did talk about the rapture in that series. And so I don't know what Lee feels about that. So we'll have to have we have conversations, me and Lee. He's pretty an intellectual guy. And so we talk about some things sometimes. But I'm not convinced there's going to be a rapture. And I do bring that out in that Heaven series. Now, I don't say there's not going to be. I show you both sides of the story, and then I leave it alone. So you will hear me do that during that Heaven series. And you might be questioning right now, well, Mike, why would you hesitate on that? I'll tell you exactly why I hesitate on it. Because none of the early church people talked about a rapture. It wasn't talked about until like 1900. You look it up. You do research. It might have been even 1800s. Never was talked about. All of a sudden, it's a new doctrine. And, I'm just hesitant on that. And I'll tell you the other reason I'm hesitant right now is this. All of the disciples lost their lives for Jesus except one. And yet we get to check out of here before things get bad. It just doesn't make sense to me. And now, here's what I also say in that series. I hope I'm wrong. Because then we check out of here before it gets bad. And that's the way I present it. I present all sides. I don't try to tell you don't believe in it. You'll hear me say those things. I'm just telling you, based on these other things, the fact that it took all that time for someone to start preaching on that, as a doctrine, until it was either 1800 something or early 1900s. I think it was 1800 something, but I'll have to look it up again. But anyway, the rest of the Heaven series is a blast. What it's going to be like with a new earth and heaven and all those things. And we'll talk about the walls and what they're made out of, and the whole series is fun. Sermon 1's just so-so. I did look back at it, and it's just mainly talking about things we need to be doing right now, or you're not even going to get in heaven. And number 2, things, just a basic understanding of how you need to be living so your rewards are higher in heaven. So it doesn't get into a lot of details. It gets in more and more details each week that I preach that series. But we'll look at it. I'm going to seriously look at it. I appreciate Jenny saying something. And I thought it was 3 years ago I preached on it. It was 5 years ago. So the chances are high. I doubt you guys were here then when I did the Heaven series. I don't think you were. Probably all that was here during that time was the COVID. Karen was probably here on that during that series, I would imagine. And she's been here forever, and I hope we get to keep her forever. And but anyway, all right, enough on all that. Any thoughts on ideas for future sermons? Anything that you feel like you would like for me to at least pray about?
Defining what faith is,
Okay.
everything that faith entails.
Okay. And I don't know that I've ever done that since I've been here. So, I mean, just do a whole, it'd probably be more than one sermon, but a series, maybe a mini-series on faith, what it means to have faith. Is that
Right.
kind of what you mean?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think there's one in my file anywhere that I've done since I've been here. And it'll be finishing 17 years in August. Okay. Anything else? Any other ideas? Jenny, did you have one? Go ahead.
As an adult, I have never heard a sermon on Jonah.
And I looked.
As a child, I have,
Yep.
but I have never heard one on Jonah.
I
as an
have a
adult, and I
file
would really
that-
be interested in that.
I have a file that's all the biblical characters I've preached on, and that same file says the ones I haven't, and Jonah's on that list, and I saw it this morning. I was looking on my, so I'll look at that. I think I preached on him maybe in my first church, but I don't have a note on it. So it'll be fresh, new stuff, and it'll be fun to do. So, okay, anything else? Go ahead. Danny has one.
Yeah, it's kind of selfish, but one that I heard a long time ago, but it was not very satisfying. But where is God in war?
In war? Whew. Yeah, you almost have to go back into the Old Testament, which has lots of battles, and look at that. Wow. That would require a lot of research probably for me to probably come up with a good answer for you on that, but thank you. What else? Anything else that you guys had? Go ahead, back in the back. Aaron's got one for me. Bless your heart, Aaron. We love you girls so much. You're so precious. And Jenny once told me, she said, it is a joy to teach these two little girls. And she considers it fun. Go ahead, Aaron.
Maybe on Samuel?
Samuel? Yeah, I did Samuel. I don't think I did his whole life. I think I did him as a kid when God called him. I'll look it up. I'll look that up and see if I've done his whole life. I think I did a little bit on him. Isn't that the story where he kept hearing the voice? Here I am. And yeah, I think I only did that. I don't know that I've done Samuel's entire life. So we'll look at that. All right, anything else?
Prayer.
Okay.
Like
And I have not done anything on prayer for a while.
why to pray, how to pray, you know.
I like that. That's good. See, you guys are giving me thoughts that you can get programmed. I mean, even though you try to hear God every week, and I try hard, sometimes your mind can get programmed a certain way that other new thoughts aren't there. And you guys are helping me with this. So this is great. Did you have another one? Somebody?
I was just saying.
Jerry, did you have one?
I was just saying, are you writing all these down?
Yeah, I'm writing them down right now.
Mike, I always enjoyed stories about Samson. And I'd like to hear some more stories that's not something that you actually see that he did. He was quite a character.
He was a
Had
character,
lots of
all right.
problems.
Yeah.
But-
I'm not opposed to doing that. I have talked about him when we used to have teen night. And I did, I don't know how many part series. So I've done some research on him. He's an interesting character. Now, when Sight and Sound did his story, it's probably been 4 years ago. I didn't go that year to it. He's just unique. So I'm not opposed to looking at it, but there's very little of his life that he lived for God. He was almost obnoxious. And yet he was one of the judges. He's supposed to be a spiritual leader. That they were called judges. And but you know, there's a lot of things we could probably learn from Samson.
Yeah, I
And,
liked him, and it was so sad at the end,
It is.
but
But it was obedience at the end. And there's miracles that happened.
that's right.
Yeah. So in the end was probably his best days. I mean, it wasn't from his perspective at the time, but I mean, he finally got it right at the very end when he was blinded, when they dug out his eyes. And so, all right, anything else? Great thoughts. Love this. Absolutely love this. Thank you for the feedback today. The only other thing, and we're not going to talk much because we need to wrap up, is I didn't know how long the sermon part would last, so I have some extra stuff. The only thing I want to mention, we'll not do a discussion on it. Lee will be okay. Thank you for helping me on that microphone. Thing I love about Lee is he looks for things in the service that will be helpful, and he mentions them, because I forgot all about the microphone, and he said, do you want me to grab the mic? And he's just on it, whereas my mind's too busy thinking of other stuff. So thank you, Lee, for being who you are. And but hopefully during the whole series, this will be the last thing that's mentioned, is hopefully you're getting a hold of the fact that we have a great group of people that attend this church. And it's fun for me. Every Sunday is fun for me, and to come here and be with you all. But we can't live just for Sundays and how much fun we have together, like it's family. We have a job to do, and that job is to win the lost. And we have got to get good at that. And we're not as good as I think we could be. The average church, small church, probably wins one person a year. The whole congregation. And we win one person a year. And so, you know, from time to time, I'll do a sermon about, you know, salvation is our job and things like that. And one of the things I hope that is happening to you is that more and more when you go out to eat, when you encounter neighbors, Annette is befriending this woman at work, and that seems to be clicking well. Seemed like you had another neighbor where you lived in the mobile home court, but maybe was that somebody that you worked with, or was that somebody Craig worked with? Seemed like there was someone in the Rogersville mobile home court. But anyway, I know you had that woman at work. Those are things that we need to pay attention to. Never force witnessing. Okay, don't do that. But at the same time, I tell you not to force it. If you're never looking for an opening, you're not going to witness. So you can't put your mind at rest. You have to always be thinking and praying for people, waitresses and neighbors. Who can you spend time with that you can kind of get to know a little bit better? Is God giving you a pulling towards someone and you need to spend extra time with that someone? One of the ones I probably have neglected is B. White's son, Sean, and we need to get him, because he'll come to my house, and we need to barbecue for him and spend more time with him. He is a precious guy, but he's never gotten saved before, but he's an awesome guy. And he came out and got in these ditches. Lee, I don't know if you did you know he did that? And there's rocks in there from them working out here, and the weeds were high, and he came over, made a trip over here, got out a weed eater, and took that down out there. And you know, that's kind of a pulling. I pray for him, but I probably need to figure out ways of barbecuing for him. Hey, come over to the house, you and your family, and we'll barbecue for you. Don't ever do it with a bad motive. Don't ever do it where it feels like the person, like you're only doing this to win me over to your religion. Don't do it like that. Don't just do it because God is bonding you with somebody, and pay attention to that and try to spend some time with them, pray for them, and look for opportunities to talk to them. That's the main thing that the last part of these questions we're going to ask, but we ran out of time. So appreciate all your feedback, and I don't know when I'm preaching next. I got several sermons that are sitting there, and waiting to either be developed or what I'm supposed to do. So I'm not sure what I'm going to tell you we're going to preach on next, but we'll see what God wants. All right, let's stand. We're going to close in prayer. Father, thank you for those that were able to come today, and just bless them. Bless also those who are out of town, or things came up, or maybe they were sick, or various things happened and they couldn't be with us, and just be with them this week. And continue to please help Mary more in her job, that they keep forcing her to work some Sundays, and she really doesn't want to do that, and just work out the details for her with her job situation. And bless Annette's friend. Please continue to help Annette as she befriends her and tries to be helpful to her through you. May we all realize we are God's vessels, that we're supposed to let God come through, not ourselves. And I pray that all of us will get really good at listening and obeying you and saying what you want us to say to people, and so that